How do you weigh a bike frame? This came up in a conversation recently, and we have a great opportunity, a really rare opportunity of weighing two almost identical bike frames. It's not a specialised SL8 and an S-Works SL8 sadly, but we do have the Look 785 Huez, which is that like their climbing bike, and the RS version. So identical geometry, identical fixtures and fittings, but in theory, the RS version should be lighter. What we're going to do is run through the ins and outs of when we actually present a frame weight to you, what it is that you want to see, and really get into the difference of like what are you actually getting or losing rather when you pay a bit more for the race spec version. So now I think we should always weigh a frame on like the minimum build that you can possibly do, and for me that means like a mech hanger, your bottle cage mounts, your headset's got to be installed, the things that won't make a bicycle unless you have them on the frame. So I've got these set up with their seat clamp that comes with the box. You could argue that you could fit a lighter weight titanium one, so we'll get into that. It comes with the axles, comes with the mech hanger. The front mech hanger is actually brazed on or riveted on, so you could argue that you could drill that out and run a one by, I know, but it's got the lower headset bearing, the upper set head bearing, the compression ring and the top cap. And you've got all this steer, which is a bit unfortunate, but I'm not about to start cutting that for the sake of a video. So we're going to measure these identically with all those fixtures and fixings, and this is 1.43 kilograms. And then this is the fully painted, the non-RS spec. This has got the mech hanger, axles, seat post clamp and the headset and a tiny little elastic band, because this one doesn't stay put unless elastic band is on there. And we are 1,570, which I make 140 grams heavier. Here is where the fun begins. Let's see where those 140 grams actually are. It's not very much. So what we're going to do is take this apart and see if there's any differences, because there are a couple of very, very subtle differences. Now, the first one that springs to mind is actually the seat clamp mount. Now, weirdly, there is a little difference in the seat clamp. This lovely one with the red anodizing came off the cheaper, heavier one, and we have got 20.2 grams. And this one, it looks a lot more standard, came off the new, more expensive one. It is actually lighter. It doesn't look quite as fancy, but it is 18.59. So those are 2 of our grams just in the seat clamp design. Okay, next up, let's get these forks out and see if there's a difference in the forks. Now, the non-RS comes with a token branded headset top there, and the rest of it all looks very, very similar. So with the token system, you have these 52mm bearings, little compression ring, and this is the top cap. I'm going to take the fork out here and let's give the fork a quick measure. So there's nothing on there now, that is completely bare. Let's hang our fork up. And we are at 390 grams. So let's have a look at the RS version, and they are exactly the same headset bearings. Okay, there we go. That is a naked fork of the RS version. And we are, oh, it's lighter, 370 grams. So we are 20 grams lighter, and to be fair, those steerer tubes are almost exactly the same, so I think most of that is probably in paint. Okay, next up, we're going to look at the frame, but I've been told that the official way of doing this is to take off all the fixtures and fittings, because you could argue that you could fit a titanium mech hanger, or you might want to run it one by, so we're going to take off as much as we possibly can. So these have actually got a double thread. I like these because they got threaded on here, and there's also a little retaining pin as well. Now, this little retaining bolt just means that your threads line up. So if when you're trying to do a really quick wheel change, the threads all line up because your mech hanger doesn't move when you take the wheel out. So Love that, good little finishing detail. Okay, so we do have some bottle cage bolts in there, but that is it, and we still got the sticker on. We are 900 grams for a size medium frame. Okay, let's see where probably most of the difference is, well I hope it is anyway, in the frame of the non-RS version. And there we go, a little over a kilo, 1010 grams. Quick recap then, the frame is 110 grams lighter, the fork is 20 grams lighter, and the seat post clamp is 1.5 grams lighter. So there's still something missing, and I think it might be in some of the other fixtures and fittings. So this is the token one, and this comes with the non-RS. That's at 17 grams. And this is a slightly different design on the RS version, and it actually feels a little bit denser. So yeah, it's actually heavier, 20 grams. So after weighing everything, we're still a couple of grams missing somewhere, probably in like weigh material discrepancies. But there we go, fairly interesting. Another little interesting note is on the lighter weight version, they also give you a crazy lightweight compression bung that goes inside the steerer tube. That is 17 grams. Now, just to be fair, let's take the top cap off because the top caps are identical. But this is the one on the non-RS version. Looks bigger, looks bulkier, but, and it is actually, it's 27 over 17, so that's a whole 10 grams heavier, but we didn't weigh that in the initial frame. So, I mean, it's your safety. I mean, this is a safety critical part. That gives you a little bit more adjustment when you're fitting your stem so that your stem can clamp over this. So ideally, you want your stem to be clamped in that position. So it gives you a bit of scope having a spacer, higher and low. Whereas this, you're going to have to be, you know, super precise because that is going to be smaller. So you're going to have to be absolutely precise with where you cut the steerer to make sure that your stem clamp is supported. Okay, so where is that 110 grams? That's basically here. I think in the forks, in all honesty, I really believe that the forks are identical and that 20 grams is purely just paint difference. But 110 grams is more than just paint. They're both painted and this isn't a particularly heavy paint job. But when you talk about what you're getting for your money, we are told that we're getting a higher modulus of carbon and lightweight materials. And that is true to some extent, but we've got to understand what it is that they're really saying, because you can't just take out material and replace it with a higher modulus. So if you can imagine the parts that make up your frame, like 300, 400 little individual bits of carbon that have all been laser cut and you're going to lay them into a frame, you can't just take all of those away and just cut it out of a higher modulus carbon because your frame will be really, really brittle. And you can't just remove like 10 of them and replace it with a piece of higher modulus carbon because the higher modulus carbon isn't significantly lighter. What they're actually doing is removing material completely, so your 300 pieces of carbon that make up this frame might only be 280 pieces of carbon that make up this frame. The difference is that what they found is that if they can replace some of those 280 pieces with a higher modulus, a stiffer carbon, then they can maintain the rigidity by removing and still remove some of those pieces. So they still need to remove material. When you talk about removing material, you've got three ways that you can do that. You can remove it in paint, obvious, that's an easy one to do. You can remove it in actual carbon fiber, like I've just discussed, or you can remove it in resin when we see those resin-starved frames. And that's a possibility too. In fact, there is a little video from Trace Velo I'm going to put up right here, and you can see on the inside of this frame that he's showing you where those fibers have not been coated in resin and they've come apart. Luke, biggest balls in cycling media, fair play to you, Luke. I would not ride that frame. Would have been really interesting to see if they would have warranted it, but yeah, not for me, that one. So those are the three ways. Sadly, sometimes when they really, really go to the nth degree to get weight down, it's sometimes the resin and how that's all being compacted is the problem. And you can't just look at a frame and say, right, this has got T1100 fibers in there, because it can't all be made out of that. The frame would be so brittle it would just crack at the first sign of a bit of impact. You need a good mix in there. So it might be elements of high modulus. It might only be 5% more to aid in the removal of material. Bear with me, I think there's still some interesting stuff to come out of this video. I've just been trying to think about the comments that I might likely to get down below. Please get down there and comment away. And that is, I imagine 900 grams, oh my God, I could get something that's 50 grams and 50 cents from AliExpress and Pandapodium. Totally get that. You were going to get comments like £3,000, what a rip-off. Well, it's all a scale from whatever you find on AliExpress to a Colnago, Envy, etc. This is somewhere in between. Price is price. We've all got our own appetite for spending. And then the other one is like 900 grams. This is for Huez RS, their race-spec. And yet something like the Scott Addict RC is 640, the Specialized Atheist, we're all touching the high 600 grams. So what's the difference? How did they actually achieve those weights? Well, there's a few things you can look at here. I haven't got the bike in front of me now, it's just gone next door to be built, but the main thing is where you strip out weight. And on the 785, you can see around the seat post area, a little bit of carbon that's poking up. That can easily be chopped off. Put a little lightweight seat clamp inside the tubing. First bit of weight saving. Second bit of weight saving is obviously that massive aluminium full sleeve bottom bracket, whereas the Atheist, etc., are either using a very lightweight single-sided BSA threads just bonded in, or they're using press fit. That obviously makes it significantly lighter as well. The headset on the Look is using a 52mm bearing. On both those other bikes, they're using a much slimmer head tube and taking out materials around the head tube, so you have to run a much slimmer bearing. There's all these sort of things that add up to just bringing the bike down and down and down. The Viglia Verticale that we featured was a similar idea. If you see, it's got a proprietary seat post. That seat post is absolutely tiny. There's hardly any material, not on the seat post itself, but the actual, the seat mast on the frame as well. Really, really slim down. So you apply all of that and you're going to be getting pretty close. And then I do think there's some design iteration in there as well, which is where the majority of the cost is coming. So if you look at this Look 785 at £3,000, you're looking at the Atheist, etc., and the Scott Addict around the £5,000 to £6,000 mark. Where is that actual money? They're probably all made in the same factory. Some of you might say, you might be right, who knows? And that is more about the two things, design iteration and risk mitigation. So when you make something very, very lightweight, to go into the risk mitigation thing, you need to accept that there are going to be more returns. It's going to fall over outside a cafe. It's going to have some impact damage, and it's probably going to break. So when you do that, you need to make sure that you've brought some extra frames which you predict are probably going to be used for warranty. All gets put into the overall price of the frame, is all factored in. The other thing is to get down to that really headline weight, they've had to do some design iterations. They've had to take your carbon fiber, those 300 bits or so, and they go, right, I'm going to remove 10 of those, and I'm going to build the bike, I'm going to put it in the test rig. Does it snap? Yes, it snapped. Okay, so I'm going to replace those 10 bits of carbon, and I'm going to put in 4 bits of high modulus carbon. Does it snap? No, it was still held up on the test rig. Brilliant. There's also other design iterations. So when you're adding those, you might need to think about the direction. So if we watched the fluidity video, we talked about directional morphing. I've got a piece of fabric here that's woven, and you can see like here it's all floppy. If I extend this out, we add some stiffness to that. And yet if I do this in the other direction, you'll see this now becomes floppy in this direction, but changing those fibers makes it stiffer in this direction. Similar idea with lots of different sheets, so you can layer them up in different ways to add stiffness in certain dimensions. And then of course there is just the resin. How do you extract as much resin as possible, but still make sure that all of the fibers actually get a good coating, so you don't have anything exposed, because if anything exposed, that's where it will create problems. So essentially iteration, iteration, iteration. Every single time you have to build a frame, put it on the test rig, destroy it. Does it snap? Okay, it did, so let's go back, let's try something else. And all over the frame, you're going to be doing that. How can we remove material here, replace it with something else, and get down to a frame that we can still put out that's going to pass all of the tests and still have a bundle of stock to account for any sort of warranty issues that we predict might happen. And then, of course, here in the West, we've always got that problem of distribution. Every single part of the chain is going to come from that factory and it's going to go into a headquarters somewhere. All the designers, the marketing team, the pro athletes, etc., they all need pay into as a profit markup. If you want to see, you know, pro teams being sponsored, then an element of your money is going into supporting that frame, whether it's X-Lab or whether it's Team Ineos or whatever. It's all going to be bundled into the price. And then finally, the shops like us who, you know, help riders get their dream bike. We don't have bikes here that you can just come along and say, hey, I want that one, and go to the till with it. That's not how we work. We work on very much bespoke basis. If you want a custom build, you'd come to us. There'd normally be a telephone call, a couple of quotes written up. You might come up here for a test ride, probably do a bike fit. We probably have a couple of quotes where we go backwards and forwards on prices. We'll build the bike for you, do another bike fit, a confirmation fit if you like. Sometimes to sell a £10,000 bike takes an employee about a week's worth of work sometimes. So we either make a markup on the actual parts that we sell, or we add that in labour time. It works out about the same. It's a service we provide. Some people really love and appreciate it. Other of you probably home mechanics and can't see the value in that at all. We're all different, right? The last question I think I'll get is, why don't I ever review any Chinese frames? The reason is insurance, being completely honest. And we did it once. We did a review of a light carbon frame. We didn't buy it. A customer of ours brought it to us. And I just wanted to check in with my insurance company and said, can I publish this? And they asked me to take bits out. I said, do not make any recommendations, don't offer any opinions, offer purely facts, because they don't want to identify us as part of the sales chain. Because we are a shop, because we are a retailer, because we've got a public liability insurance, we would be the last point of call of anyone that brought a Chinese frame on our recommendation, because you cannot take that case, if you like, further up the chain. You brought a Villiers from us and you had a problem with it, our insurance company, our lawyers would pass it up the chain to Villiers, and they would pass it up the chain to whoever did the test. You know, there's always an end of the chain. When we're dealing with Chinese brands, we are the end, so we don't do that. Why do other YouTubers do it? Well, because they're not necessarily a shop. They might not have the public liability insurance. They're not a target, trying to take a case to someone without any public liability insurance, and you're probably not going to get very far, even if you win. Whereas us, we've got £10 million worth of public liability insurance. We're putting a big target on our back if we were to make recommendations. So I don't really want to increase my insurance premiums to cover me for reviewing Chinese frames. So anyway, there we go, full transparency. That's how it all breaks down. I hope you found all this video somewhat useful. I cannot wait to read your comments. It's going to be dead interesting, I think. I've enjoyed making this video. I hope you've enjoyed watching it. If you did, please subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Oh, next one, actually, dead exciting. Make sure you subscribe, because we are selling off all of our X demos, all the bikes that you've seen on the channel over the last couple of years. We need to make room for some new stuff. We've got really new, exciting stuff to come in for review and for you guys to come and test ride. But we need to clear out some of the old stuff. So it's going to be a bit of a long-term review. This is how this has held up over the last couple of years. And come and buy it if you want to. It's dirt cheap. Right, get subscribed, hit that little bell notification, and hopefully you'll pick up a bargain from the next video. Cheers.